All right, so yeah, my name's Hannah. As I said, I'm 28 years old. You've already found out that I'm married, which is it's awesome. It's really great to have an English husband, which is, as a German, because I'm originally German, has always been something that I never thought was ever going to happen, to be honest, because I was just living in Germany, you know. And if we have any slides, that first slide, I think. Right, so you can see a few things there. I've already mentioned some things. I'm obviously, like I said, from Germany and married. There's a little picture from our wedding day, which Lizzie was there as well, which is great. And then if you go to the second one, yeah, there, oh, no, that's the last one, I think.
I think if you go down, yeah, hang on.
Anyway, I'll just keep going. If you find the slide, that's great. Just a few things about me. I came to England now nearly 5 years ago. So I came to England in 2016 with an organization called PACE. PACE is an organization that sends young people to all kinds of different countries to work with church and with young people in schools. So the aim of working with PACE is really that you connect the young people who are in school with the church and build a bridge there. And that's how I met Lizzie, because I was placed in a host family. This is a free gap year. I'll tell more about that later as well. And was placed with her family, which was an amazing time as well. So nearly 5 years now that I've been in England, 2 years with PACE and 3 years with leading a project called the Brighter School of Discipleship, which I'll tell you more about later. If you can see it, I'm not sure at the moment, but I love playing instruments. That's part of my hobbies. I started playing the violin when I was about 14 or 13, and learned it for a couple of years, and just recently, just a couple of years ago, I started playing the cello, which at the moment is only wall decoration, but I'm hoping to take up lessons again soon, because I bought a cello especially for that. So, but I would say probably my favorite instrument to play is the piano, which Lizzie loves playing the piano as well. She's much better than me, but while I was living there, we had a really beautiful piano, and it was absolutely amazing to be able to play that. So, yeah, that's a little bit of background about me, and I have got some key passages, 2 key Bible passages that I'll share with you guys today, but you will find out about them in a minute. So, okay, it's fine. Don't worry about it if it doesn't come up. So my church background is I grew up in a Christian family. So my parents were Christians, so I was kind of born into, a family that already knew about Jesus, that were like very much focused on going to church every Sunday, and being very kind of, strict about, you have to go, you kind of can't like miss it and stuff. And I had, all my friends were at church. I was very much like integrated into church. So yeah, Jesus has always been part of my life in a sense, that I always kind of knew about him. But the interesting part of, I think, my story is that I actually grew up in a church that was quite controlling and actually quite, it was very focused on the rules and kind of keeping all the laws, and there was a very, very strict sense of you were controlled, and you couldn't really kind of share with anyone what you had done wrong, because you would be judged for it. So there was a lot of judgment as well. So that was my experience, and that kind of led me very much to having the following belief sets, or sets of belief. As a Christian, you have to be perfect. You are not allowed to make mistakes or be weak. Though that was one of my mistakes. That was one of the beliefs that were, conveyed to me by the leadership. God is disappointed and angry with me when I have messed up, and I can't possibly come to him when I have made a mistake. That's another one. God wants to control my life and suck out anything that could possibly be fun. Those are the kind of things, the main beliefs that I had about God. So what my image of God, and this is kind of why I have those questions on the table as well, my image of God was very, one-sided. It was very much focused on God being the judge, God being, kind of just like ruling on sin and all those kind of things that are true, but it's one side. We also have the other side that was very, very much not communicated. That kind of side that speaks about forgiveness and, his love and his mercy.
And fun.
And fun, exactly, and fun. That's a big one, I never thought I was
I don't know how you stayed there. I'm itching to know what happened.
I was there for 20 years, and I just didn't realize that it was that's how I grew up. That's all I learned. So it was, it took a big kind
It's just like that at Christchurch, isn't it?
Gosh, I hope I'm not exposing anyone right now.
No fun. No.
Well, I can see that that's not true, but anyway, so yeah, those kind of beliefs led me to be very timid. You will understand. I'm still learning the British humor, by the way, so have some mercy with me when I'm not getting the jokes. Yeah, very German in my humor still. But yeah, so I was very timid, very kind of afraid of God, didn't really have, like I said, you weren't really allowed to have fun. So it was kind of like that timid, afraid, and not really believing that you could do anything, because you were always kind of just like trying to get God's, affirmation. You were kind of working for your salvation, trying to constantly do good things. But then also sometimes you would go into the more rebellious side and kind of be like, well, what's the point? I can't do it anyway. So it was a mix of that in my kind of teenage years. If you ask Adam, I was probably the most harmless teenager you will have ever met, because like my church upbringing was very insulated, so I didn't really see anything of the outside world. It was very much just everything was in church. So I'm still finding out some things that like 20 years later than everyone else, to be honest. But yeah, so that was a big part. Thankfully, at some point, I realized, and I think it was in one of our meetings that we had on a weekly basis, something really, really awful happened, I think, with one of the people who were there. They were treated really badly, or I was making a point, and then, I had the feedback from the pastor of the church. And then on the way home, I just had some kind of like a revelation moment, and I really do think that God kind of opened my eyes in that moment, if you know what I mean, like kind of just, was the scales coming, that kind of thing. That's how I felt, and I realized, okay, this can't be all there is to God, there must be more. And so that was a big moment for me, and that really changed, everything for me, because and that was a really hard part, because I've been part of this church for 20 years, I grew up with the people there. It was really hard for me to leave, because I left those people behind. Obviously, we still stayed friends, but it's hard, isn't it, when you're kind of realizing that something isn't quite right, and then, you still try to be friends. So I left after 20 years, and thankfully, that wasn't the case for the rest of my family. I actually found a really great youth group that would then lead on to being a church. They actually became a church later on called Open Heaven, which is fun because it was actually an English name. That was my influence, but yeah, well, I joined this youth group, and they very much kind of showed me that other side of God, like that love, that kind of mercy and the fun as well. So I learned a lot about, who God really is. And from that moment on, from when I realized that I was like, I had been cheated out of really kind of knowing who God really is, I was determined. I was like, I want to know who God is. Like, I'm not going to give up until I really know, who he is. And that was amazing in a sense that I had people around me who could really help me find out. It's a very important thing to have people who can, support you in that journey. So yeah, I had lots of questions. At that point, I was very much like, well, I'm starting from scratch, because I have some basics, but like I had to kind of rethink everything, really thinking about, well, what's true and what's false. And I'm still learning that, to be honest. 8 years later, I'm still learning, and there's still some lies that are like in my head that will come up at times that I'm having to fight, and still kind of replacing them with the truth. So anyway, after I left my church and found that youth group, got involved, and I had 2 people there in that youth group and that church later on, Open Heaven, that were really amazing people. They invested in me, as the first people that they're the reason why I'm here today as a youth leader, as someone who's involved in leadership. And, they massively built my confidence. I think they were probably the first people who really saw something in me and actually invested in me, which is part of why I'm massively passionate about, investing in young people and helping them see, what they have to give and how amazing they are. And in that time when I joined that church, I was also studying. I was studying to be a teacher and studied English and psychology, kind of education. How do you, communicate something and teach, basically, because I wanted to be a teacher. And it had been, from the beginning of my life, well, like throughout the teenage years, I always had that dream to like live in England. I had a real obsession with England. I was absolutely, in love with the people and the culture, and any opportunity I had, I would just go to England and, spend time there. If any of you know Capernwray Hall, it's just, I think is it Carnforth, I think, yeah. It's just up there, it's a Bible school, and you can go over summer and serve as staff for 4 weeks, and I did that twice, and, whenever I could, I would go to England. So while I was studying, and in Germany you have to study for 5 years to become a teacher. It's quite a long, time. I was in 2 years of my 5-year studies, and I just suddenly got that real sense of urgency that I needed to go to England because, I was like, after my studies, I'm probably not going to do it, So I just felt a real sense of urgency. And so I applied for PACE to go to England. And I didn't ask God, I didn't ask God, what do you think about me going to England? I was just, no, I'm going to do it, because God's just going to say no anyway, because he doesn't want me to have any fun, or he doesn't want anything that I do, right? And that was still my belief set at that time.
Did you say what PACE was earlier?
Yeah, it's like
I thought when I was over there, I thought you might have said it.
Yeah, it's an organization that basically you can go do a gap year with in lots of different countries, and you work for the church and for schools. So you do lots of schools work, lots of church work, and kind of, try and kind of connect the young people from school into their local
But God
church.
was going to say no anyway, so...
It's bizarre, isn't it? He was going to say no. I was like, oh, goodness. Anyway, I went to church, and I hadn't asked God, and this church service, someone was preaching, and they were preaching about obedience. And, they were like, if you're doing something, just ask God, and, he will say, and I was like, right then, I guess I'm going to have to ask God, because he's clearly speaking to me here, that I need to be obedient. Already kind of preparing myself to be disappointed and think, okay, maybe God wants me to go somewhere else, where I didn't really want to go. But not to England, because that's my dream. And how, God would never, fulfill my dream. It's my dream, So anyway, I asked him, kind of just prayed and said, God, do you want me to go to England? And literally, it's hard to describe this, but within a few milliseconds, it didn't even take long. In my head, I thought, I thought I heard God say...
Wigan.
Not quite that precise, but I thought I heard him say, go to England, as clear as day. It was like not an audible voice, but it was just like a very strong sense that was God saying, go to England. And I was like so surprised. I was like, what? Like, this is so bizarre. God wants me to go to England. So yeah, but I was studying, and in the middle of your studies, you can't just go do a gap year, at least not in Germany, they don't really do that. So it was actually quite a big hurdle to really, get that gap year, and they made a massive exception, which was a miracle, and it was amazing because I could go without having to drop out of uni, which was really important to me because, I didn't want to drop out of uni because I was planning to be here for only 1 year. You can see that didn't quite work out. So anyway, yeah, that was awesome. So, that is kind of where the first Bible passage comes in. And that is Jeremiah 29:11. You will all know this passage, I'm sure.
We will.
Or if you don't know, it's one of the best Bible passages, I think, in the Bible. It's, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. And that, for me, knowing my background now, was hard to believe. It was hard to believe for me that God would have a plan for me that would, include me having some fun, basically, and include me having some of the things that are in my heart actually fulfilled. But I can tell you right now, it's the complete opposite. God did fulfill, I think, probably all of my heart's wishes that were like, going to England, living in England, and marrying an English guy was part of that too, so that was a big one as well. And so, God really sees our heart, and I think that's important. So, yeah, he made it happen. He made it happen that I could go to England for that year. Had an amazing time in Wigan. First of all, I didn't choose Wigan. They chose me, I had never heard of Wigan before. I was like, I just know it's somewhere between Manchester and Liverpool. That's all I know, But I absolutely fell in love with the people in Wigan. Great folks. And just, from day one, really kind of had that feeling that it's already going way too quick. I'm already like feeling like it's going away way too quickly and I want to stay longer. So started praying really early on, God, do you want me to stay for another year? Like probably about a week in, I was already praying that, like that's how much fun I had, and like I prayed this for probably about 3 to 4 months. I was praying and I got, again, the impression I got was saying, yeah, stay here. But then again, there was this big hurdle of university, right? I wasn't finished with uni, and this time I was pretty sure that would have to mean that I would have to drop out of uni. So that was a big, big risk for me to take, because again, if anyone knows any Germans, it's very, very, very important to have a good education in Germany, and especially because without a good education, you're pretty much like, it's hard, let's say it that way. And my parents were always very much like, it's important that you have a good education. So, funny little story just in there, I was preparing to go home, tell my parents I was gonna, kind of stay in England and drop out of uni. And I was praying for my dad, because my dad was usually the one who was really strict and like really wanted me to give my best everything and education and stuff. I was praying for my dad for like probably about 6 weeks. I think it was during Lent. So I was kind of just thinking, okay, if I pray for him for 6 weeks, I'm sure he'll be fine with it, and keep supporting me and stuff. Got home to Germany, and my dad was like, yeah, sure, if that's what God wants for you, that's fine. And my mum was like, you can't do that. I was like, flipping heck, I forgot to pray for my mum, kind of thing. Because I didn't think she was going to have a problem with it. But there you go. It's a good to always pray for, cover everyone kind of thing. Anyway, yeah. So spent a second year with PACE, which was, again, an amazing year. Saw lots of miracles, which, again, that was something new to me. Started really developing that kind of personal relationship with God, and kind of learning how to hear his voice.
Just pause there. Just slip that one in. Saw lots of miracles. That might be a question to come back to.
Yeah, I'm happy to share. Lizzie, actually, I witnessed her experiencing a miracle, so, if she's up for it, she can share that as well. But it was an amazing time where I learned so much about, God's goodness and his mercy and his forgiveness, and just, I learned so much grace for myself, which was awesome. Still, Jeremiah 29:11 obviously applies here, because during my second year with PACE, I was wondering, what am I going to do after this year? Like, I don't want to keep just doing PACE, because it's unpaid, and you have to live with a host family, which in my case was the best thing ever, and that was actually the thing I missed afterwards. But, I needed to have some kind of income at some point and kind of have some kind of perspective longer term. So, we, in Wigan, we have got lots of good youth work going on, but we still saw that there was a bit of a need for kind of more investment for the young people. So we came up with this idea of a discipleship school for anyone really, but specifically focused on the younger people, because we really wanted to give them an opportunity to kind of have a whole year of intense kind of training and really investment in them, which again for me was, something very close to my heart, because that's what I didn't have when I was younger. So I started working during my second PACE year on a curriculum, for that, and kind of not having a job or anything, not knowing if there was going to be any kind of role or anything. I was just totally kind of just like, okay, God, I'm trusting you. You've got a good plan, and whatever happens, happens kind of thing. Which, if I think back now, I'm just like, how the heck did I not freak out constantly? Because honestly, now I don't think, it was definitely taking a lot of risk, which I think now, I'm so glad I took that risk. But anyway, so I wrote this curriculum, started writing lessons, and then at the end of my second PACE year, there was a job that was made available for this, as Brighter School Discipleship Leader. And I had strong competition, and I got the job, which again, total miracle in my eyes. And so for the last 3 years, I've been working, developing this thing called Brighter School of Discipleship, and have had the most amazing experiences with, all these amazing young people that have joined, and older people as well. Actually, fun fact, our oldest student was 60 years old. Just that was the oldest student. But we had an age range at times from 11 to 60, and that was amazing, because we loved seeing that kind of bringing those generations together. My time with BSD again has been totally having and learning again and again to rely on God, and not try and do things out of my own strength. And I tell you, my husband will tell you, it's a constant nightmare with me, isn't it? Because I'm always thinking, I'm not doing enough, I'm not good enough, you know, kind of thing. So I'm still learning, you know, that God is enough and he has done enough, and, you know, I can totally rely on his strength and don't have to work for my salvation. Like, I think from when I first started this journey, probably about 8 years ago, you know, with coming out of that church, I've found so much more compassion for myself, so much more grace, and that's all just because, you know, I've realized that Jesus always had that in the first place. You know, he was always a gracious God who wants to obviously challenge us and help us grow. You know, he wants to set us free from sin and all these kind of things, but that is never pushed, or that is never kind of forced upon us. And he's so far from, you know, that kind of boring guy who just wants to make our life miserable. I think I'm probably, I'm a good example, I think, for, you know, someone thinking God's just going to make my life not fun, and actually him literally, without him I would never be as, I think, fulfilled, you know, because I have this amazing job that I get to do every day, and I love it. Yeah, there is obviously sacrifice involved as well. I live in England, my family is in Germany, just because of the family thing, but I love living in England. I wouldn't want to live in Germany at the moment, but yeah, you know, there are sacrifices as well if we follow God's plan, but I think it's so worth it. So yeah, I think concluding that, it's just, you know, if you trust God and he has an amazing plan for your life, and, you know, he's so far from a boring God who just wants us to, you know, wants to control us. And my challenge or my encouragement is always, don't give up on him, don't give up on him yet. You know, he has so much more to reveal to you about who he really is. That's my story.
Brilliant. You're very right. Okay, fab. I hope that's given you some food for thought around your tables. But also, just want to check, there was a video, was there? Was that part of this, or was that for later? Or
That was part of this, but it's fine.
are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay, because we could get that working. I don't know what we did wrong anyway. There we go. Technology without Anyway, it'd be great if you just wanted to talk around your tables, try and focus on what Hannah has been saying. Maybe picking out anything that just struck you. It's very tempting in this time to talk about how the weather's been today and everything else. But actually, it'd be good just to chat about anything that struck you or made you go, whoa, or I don't agree with that, or how on earth can that be? Or I really want to know about that. And then after that, we're going to just bring the microphone around the tables. And if you can agree on your table, maybe 1 or 2 questions that you're really itching to ask. And, you know, maybe it's about Hannah, but maybe you're itching to know about Lizzie or Adam, that we'll get any of you out. So is that all right? Just give you sort of 5 minutes to chat it over. What's encouraged you, what's challenged you, what's baffled you, and then come back with any questions.